the tea on everything greenwashing, mislabeling, and a lot of general problems that I see misrepresentation in the jewelry industry today. Specifically really greenwashing, because I think the millennial generation, like our generation, is the biggest kind of consumer segment on the market at the moment. You guys are our target, and so we know that you guys are very, very eco-conscious. And so because of that, a lot of companies, in order to give themselves more of an edge, they will use a lot of like labels like eco, green, sustainable, ethical, all of these things. And so we're gonna break this down today. You guys can kind of like understand what this means, what to look out for, and what questions to ask before buying these products that make these claims. Because, spilling the tea here, 9 out of 10 companies, let me tell you, are misrepresenting their products. It is incredible. I have worked in high jewelry, so I've made up, like $50,000 rings. Just like I've made fashion jewelry, I've worked in every single part of jewelry, from fabrication to 3D design to sourcing materials, sales. I've done it all. So I've seen like a really big aspect of a lot of these companies, like from the front and the back. So first thing we're going to touch on is ethically made. So the two first things that come to mind when ethically made, we're talking about like people and like work conditions, and we're also talking about the environment. So when we're talking about ethically made, when we're importing a lot of products from overseas, from third world countries, I think in the last like 2 decades there's been like a big overturn and exposure of kind of like really bad work conditions, slave labor, child labor. So now today we say ethically made because we want to ensure that these things are not happening. So I see a lot of companies in Canada and the US making claims kind of like ethically made. But when you think about it, it doesn't make sense. Because in Canada, in the US, we have very high standards of work labor. We have very high standards of like work conditions, fair pay. We don't have child labor, we don't have slave labor in Canada. So saying something that is ethically made, that's made in Canada, you are legally obliged to. Like, it just doesn't make sense. I cannot have slaves. I would go to jail. And so to say that my jewelry is ethically made because I am following the law, it's a little bit funny, you know what I'm saying? It's a little bit weird. Then we have ethically made in the sense of like the environment, okay? And when it comes down to the environment, I think it's a little bit more pertinent to the jewelry industry in the sense that like we have to mine our materials for the most part. Gold comes from the ground, so do gemstones as well. And so the mining of these resources can be damaging, right? In Canada, in the US, we do have much more strict environmental guidelines. So for example, like if a mine was in Canada, once the mine is no longer in use, the company would have to basically like replenish the land, right? They would have to reforest all the trees that were cut down. They would have to like make sure that the ground is not contaminated, things like this, okay? And so it makes a little bit more sense to say ethically made in that regard. However, I don't think that you can put the label across the board. I think that it's kind of like an overall general term for something that is very specific. Like if you say ethically made because I use recycled gold, that's one thing. Ethically made because I use ethically sourced gemstones, that is more specific. There's so many different aspects to a business. Like even just like when we dump our water content, right? So we have what we call barats. We have like acid baths, that all of these things end up containing contaminants that a lot of people will just throw into the water. So like you may source ethically sourced gemstones, but then if your day-to-day practices are not in consideration of the environment, to me it's too broad of a term, is what I'm getting at. So now we have ethically made and we have ethically sourced. So ethically sourced means that the gemstones or the gold that you are sourcing are coming from, basically, like I said earlier, mines that are mindful of the environment and don't have like slave labor and things like that. It's like really hard for us to actually guarantee every single gemstone that we are procuring are actually ethically sourced. Like when I sell an engagement ring that has like, for example, a Montana sapphire, I can guarantee you that it's ethically sourced because it's coming from Montana. But I'm not going to go and put across the board that all my gemstones are ethically sourced, because it's not the case, right? That ties into like Canadian diamonds. I see this a lot. A lot of companies will say, we use 100% Canadian diamonds. Along the girdle of the diamond, there's always generally a serial number, right? That's going to be engraved on the diamond to be able to identify it. That's going to correspond to its like GIA report. Canadian diamonds, not only do they have this serial number, but they also have a little Canadian flag or a little polar bear on the girdle as well. And that means that it's Canadian. However, they will not do this for diamonds that are under 24 points. What does that mean? It means that they will not do this for diamonds 4 millimeters and under. The reason why is because it's too much money for them to engrave on the diamond comparatively to the actual worth of the diamond itself. Which means that you cannot track anything smaller than 4 millimeters. You can't track it. Without a serial number, you have no idea where this diamond is actually coming from. Like, you could technically take your mealy diamonds, like your diamond pavé, and send it to GIA, and maybe they can try and find an origin of it by looking at the structure of the formation. Like, it's very unlikely. They're also going to charge you significantly high rates, so that's why we don't do it. And so when somebody says we use entirely Canadian diamonds, not true. I'm just saying. So I see a lot of these companies making these claims, putting these in their titles on their website, and a lot of them are false. I think that they're really doing that in order to give themselves a competitive edge. I'm gonna sound like such a dick, but it's the truth. When their jewelry is very generic and very basic, I find that oftentimes they try to give themselves some differentiating mark by saying these things. Like, even locally made. I know so many companies who claim that their jewelry are locally made fashion brands, okay? Let me break this down for you. Most fashion jewelry, if something is locally made and it costs $60, like a full, necklace, gold-plated, everything, I'm sorry, but like the cost of labor here is significant, okay? I really, really highly doubt that they are actually locally made. And so what I usually see is either one, it says locally made, but it's actually just assembled here. So companies will go and they will buy like what we call findings, so kind of like all the little charms and all the little components of the jewelry, import it and just assemble it here and ship it out. It's kind of locally made, but for me, it should be packaged as assembled here, because for somebody like us who we really design, print, cast, set the stones, polish, everything 100% locally here, I can tell you the cost of labor and the cost of production is like not at all the same, and it makes it harder for companies who are genuinely doing this to compete with these lower end prices that are just kind of riding the coaster on kind of like false advertising. So it's a little bit frustrating in that sense. Or even just like, I know companies who literally just make their jewelry abroad, import it, and say that they make it here. So one thing that you can really usually tell the difference is in their stories. If it is actually made here, you will see the behind the scenes. Like, we always have behind the scenes. We can show you our atelier, we can show you how they're made. When companies are posting to give that local aspect and like increase their prices because of the local aspect, if you never see their studio, like, that's a little bit weird. Let's talk about gold. There's a lot of different types of gold, like recycled, conflict-free, fair mined. Within Canada anyways, any of the gold that we're going to be buying is going to be conflict-free. What does this mean? It means that basically the gold that's imported is not coming from areas of war. The profits of this gold is not being used to fund war, to fund terrorism, everything along those lines. However, this is like a standard, okay? So when somebody brags about it, it's like, okay, yeah, but like that's the standard. Like, it is what it is, right? So when somebody says that they use conflict-free gold, great, sure, but that is actually the base standard within Canada. I don't know if it really deserves merit in any sense. I see a lot of brands today who are trying to be as sustainable as possible, as eco as possible, and so they make a lot of claims, conflict-free, recycled gold, things like that. I think you really want to ask them where they're actually buying their gold. because when you're buying recycled gold, at least in Montreal anyways, it's not something that's like just readily available. Like the casting houses here do not offer recycled gold. You have to bring it in yourself. And so if you are actually using recycled gold, then you will have the documentation for it, you will have the paperwork for it. It's the same as Fairmind. And so when somebody tells you that they are using recycled gold, especially on a large scale for larger businesses, be very, very skeptical of that. 9 out of 10 times it's not true. We are able to do recycled gold, and the only reason why is because we do it piece by piece, okay? We are not a huge production company. We specialize in custom orders, minimum orders at higher price points. That is what we do. And so we have the luxury of being able to do piece by piece, because when you're using recycled gold, client's gold, you cannot actually just mix it into a batch of regular casting, because the gold, we don't know where it's coming from. It could be contaminated, it could be bad gold, which actually does happen. And so you can't mix it in with normal casting, which means that you have to do it separately, which is very time consuming, very labor intensive. So when bigger companies say that they are using recycled gold, be a little bit skeptical of it. Fairmind gold. So Fairmind gold basically comes from usually smaller artisanal companies, manufacturers. They have very rigorous testing, okay? And so during this testing, I think I read somewhere it's like between 18 to 24 months before they even get approval to be called Fairmind. It ensures that like everything on the global aspect is like handled properly. So the staff is well paid, they're well taken care of, the working conditions is like excellent. The environmental impact, you know, they'll filter the water used, they'll try to do as least damage as possible to the environment when mining. So it is really kind of like the holy grail of gold. However, it is going to be significantly more expensive. But if you are somebody who is looking for something that is like really as conscious as possible, that is a good option for you. Next we have lab grown diamonds, which is a very taboo topic in the jewelry industry. I feel like people are either very much for or very much against it. There's like no in between. So if you don't know what a lab grown is, first of all, it's basically a lab diamond. So it's something that was synthetically made from a seed. So basically what they do is they take kind of like a speck of a natural diamond that would naturally occurred in the formation of the ground. They take a little piece of it and they kind of grow it into a synthetic diamond. So it's something that's made in a lab basically versus mined in the earth. Coming from somebody who is in the jewelry industry and has been in it for almost a decade, I would never offer to sell a lab-grown diamond to a client. The reason why is because, first of all, it is one of the worst investments that you can ever possibly make. I don't even buy it from my diamond dealers because they don't keep it in stock, and the reason they don't keep it in stock is because by the time they sell it, they will have lost money. They depreciate in value like 25 to 30% annually. It's kind of like this like common saying that as soon as you leave the jewelers, your ring is worthless, right? So I would never feel comfortable selling it to a client knowing this, and I genuinely feel that the people who are selling lab-grown diamonds are just trying to make a quick buck off of you, and I really, really disagree with that. And the crazy thing is that when I tell people that buying lab-grown is a really bad investment, a lot of the times I will get the reply, but I'm not going to sell my engagement ring, you know, it's forever, so I don't care if it depreciates in value. But that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. I shake you, okay? Because if you were to, like, take a comparison of buying a house, okay? If you're going to buy a house and you're going to live in it for the rest of your life, and then eventually you're going to give it to your children who will inherit it, you want that house to have worth. You want it to appreciate over time versus depreciating, okay? It's the same concept for an engagement ring, right? When you're going to give it to your children, you still want it to be worth something. Even though it is lab grown, you are still paying a significant amount of money for it, right? It's you know, generally speaking, you're going to be paying at least over $2,000 for your lab grown engagement ring, like minimum. And so you still want it to be worth something at the end of the day. But I very much disagree with that logic. And I feel like because a lot of companies know that lab-grown diamonds are very, very bad investments for their clients, they kind of try to spin it in a way that it's better for the environment, or that it's conscious like you have a good conscience in buying it because it's like it's not a blood diamond. But let me break this down to you. So blood diamonds, first of all, when I took my diamond grading classes like 2 years ago or something, it actually turns out that blood diamonds are only 2% of the market. Of all the diamonds in the world, it's 2%. The likelihood of you actually getting a blood diamond is so extremely rare. Like, you would have to be so unlucky, like really, like, props to you. Go buy a lottery ticket if you actually get one, okay? Because not likely. In Montreal, I think most of the diamonds are actually Russian diamonds. So, you know, if you really want to make sure that you have a good diamond, and actually usually Canadian diamonds are of higher quality, buy Canadian, buy Australian diamonds. And then there's like the whole, how can I say, there's the whole social impact. People need to understand that yes, mining is a very difficult job, but it is a job. It provides money for like millions of people. I think the diamond mining industry, the miners, like 16% of them are actually artisanal miners. So this means that they're mining like kind of like solo. They're not mining under like big organizations or for companies. They're mining kind of like in small villages themselves, family miners, things like that. And these people are making a living from mining. And so if you kind of go and you put like this big taboo on it, like there shouldn't be, because it provides job for them. A lot of these miners previously were actually cattle farmers, and these cattle farmers actually created more environmental impacts than the diamond mining does. And they're also making more money. I don't think that you should actually see diamonds as a very negative social impact, because if you compare it to lab diamonds, the social economics, nobody's actually benefiting from that. If you look inside laboratories where lab-grown diamonds are made, it's just a factory. There's barely any workers there. The community is not benefiting it from that. So I realized that this is like a very dense topic. So the last branch, so we touched on kind of like the social economics, we touched on blood diamonds, but I also want to touch on like the environmental impacts. So yes, mining does disrupt the environment, 100%. I'm not going to argue with that. But to say that lab-grown diamonds are necessarily better, no, it's not. The amount of power that it actually takes to fuel the production of creating lab diamonds, I mean, to make one lab diamond, you need over 30 tons of pressure compressing this seed, like this little stone. That takes huge amount of power, huge amount of resources. I'm sorry, but it's not made from a little guy in the back pedaling on his bicycle. It's not, okay? To create these diamonds, they also have mixed metals that are actually in them. One of these metals are graphite. The mining of graphite is very harmful. Some of these metals that are used to produce lab-grown diamonds are more harmful to the environment than diamond mining. So there's like a lot more layers to it than it looks. I will refresh and say that these are the reasons why I will never sell lab-grown diamonds to clients unless if they beg me. If you want to buy an ethically sourced diamond in terms of like environment and social, buy Canadian, buy Australian diamonds, but be aware they will be 10% more than a regular diamond. Hey guys, sorry I completely forgot this segment, so this is just gonna be like a little bloop. But another thing that I see that I completely forgot in terms of like sustainability and everything, one thing that I see all the time is brands who have gold-plated jewelry essentially will market themselves as sustainable, they'll market themselves as green, eco-conscious, all these things. But you have to understand that any single point of time when a jewelry is gold-plated, it is automatically fashion jewelry. And fashion jewelry has a very short lifespan, right? So a lot of the times, like, they'll market it in different ways in the sense of like sometimes they'll say it's vermeil, it's dipped, it's plated, 3 microns, 5 microns, 10 microns, I don't care. At the end of the day, it is a superficial plating on top of a base metal, okay? So what ends up happening is it starts to wear off. Sometimes if it's brass, it can start, the underneath can start to rust through. Silver will still oxidize through the gold plating. That's what happens when your jewelry gets gross. It wears down really quickly. So I've sold fashion jewelry for a long time. I worked in a store store that sold like, we had like, I don't know, maybe 12 designers and all of them used gold-plated jewelry, and I can very much guarantee you that like regardless of the techniques that they use, they don't last. They have a very short lifespan. They can be from like 2 months to 6 months, and that's pretty much it. For jewelry that you're wearing every single day, they have an extremely short lifespan. And what ends up happening is that everybody just ends up throwing them out because, you know, they're only $50, $70, $100 pieces. People don't really care. It's not like when you invest in gold jewelry and, you know, it's a certain price point and it has a certain value to the materials. When you're buying fashion jewelry, the hard reality is you're not paying for anything. You're paying $100 for something that, honestly, I'm not even exaggerating, the margins for fashion jewelry are like disgusting. Fine jewelry has very small margins because it costs what it costs and that's what we sell it for. But fine jewelry, you will pay a ring $100 and it literally costs $1.50 US to make. And I'm not shitting you. It is like insane, the margins. These pieces are made to be thrown out. It's made to be able to refresh, you know, every single time a new trend comes up. But that's really not sustainable. And so a lot of companies will market themselves as sustainable, but the whole principle behind that is just, it doesn't work. Alright guys, thanks for watching my very long rant. And so I'm Dominic Flux. Make sure you like that, and we will see you next time for more